Welcome to the Lomas series on starting and managing your law practice. This is the marketing segment, building the small firm marketing program from plan to ethical action. I'm Dustin Cole, President and Master Practice Advisor of Attorneys Masterclass, and we help attorneys build more successful and profitable practices. The purpose of today's program is to help you understand how to market effectively in a highly competitive and increasingly competitive marketplace, and to move you into effective, consistent action and eventually success in your marketing efforts. I want to lay some groundwork here so that you understand the environment that you're working in. I want to talk about the changes in the economy and the market for legal services. In the end of 2009, the Bureau of Labor Statistics gave out some unemployment projections, and they've turned out to be pretty much right on target. They said in 2010 we'd be around 9.7% nationally. Unfortunately, in Florida at this point, we're at 12%. But they said essentially that we would not be below 9.5% until almost the year 2020. So understand what this really means. You are dealing not only in a highly competitive marketplace, but a marketplace that is affected long-term by changes in economics and changes in consumer attitudes. Not only that, but in the practice of law, we have some very disturbing statistics. We currently have almost 1.2 million lawyers in the country, and that really equates to one for every 258 Americans. It's actually worse than that, because only half of every American, of the total Americans in the country, will ever use the services of a lawyer. So essentially, we have one lawyer for every 129 Americans. On top of that, we're graduating more than any other profession. We graduated 16,000 doctors in 2009, 45,588 new lawyers. At the same time, we're having lots and lots of lawyers already with existing practices and existing law firms leaving those firms and moving out to become small firm or sole practitioners. Firms are postponing associate hiring. We read articles all the time about the fact that firms are delaying. There was an article not too long ago about a firm that had hired associates and was going to pay them to go away for a year. That's no longer happening either. Senior attorneys aren't leaving either. They're not making space for the next generation because so many of them have seen changes in their finances. And on top of that, the LSAT tests are up 20% to the highest in history. ABA Journal put out a very, very telling statistic. For many, many years, probably 30 years, the number of sole practitioners or people in firms of 3 and less has been someplace between 55–57%. In the 4-year period since 2006, that has jumped from 55% to 62% nationally. And one of the leaders in the industry, Brad Hildebrandt of Hildebrandt Consultants, made the statement that by about 2007, the supply-demand equation had shifted dramatically. Supply is no longer automatic for lawyers. We now have to create it. One of the most important things that I can provide to you here is what's called the Cobb Value Curve, which was developed by a friend of mine in, Houston, I think, about how consumers spend for legal services. He said essentially that there are 4 categories that people spend money in. The first is what's called the nuclear event. That's the, oh my God, fix it or I'll die, and then send me the bill. In other words, price is not an object. This is about maybe 4% of the marketplace. The next area is what's called hired for experience. It's about 16% of the market. This is where the consumer recognizes the value of the high level of expertise, experience, and is willing to pay more for it. Third category is called the brand name services. Now what this means, the easiest way I can explain that is the billboard. People come to law firms or individuals because that firm has essentially what they say in advertising has branded themselves. They become a consumer aware commodity. Good example of that is my wife will not buy anything generic. She believes somehow that Advil is better than ibuprofen. And this is what consumers take right into the area of legal services. When they recognize the name, when they know that name, or they've heard it spoken, or they've seen it someplace, they have the sense that perhaps it's a little better than something else. However, that's only about 40% of the total dollars spent for legal services. Mr. Cobb, my friend, says that about 60% of the dollars are spent on what he calls commodity services. Now what that means is that these are services where the consumer doesn't really see much added value to the lawyer in the process. In other words, it's all about just some simple thing, and the consumer can decide whether or not they want to use a lawyer or go buy software or find a form on the web. And that's exactly what's happening in this area of commodity services. The demand for lawyers doing commodity services is collapsing. It's absolutely collapsing. Where are they going? Well, they're going to software, Willmaker, Quicken Family Lawyer, things of this sort. They're going to the web. The web has created a dangerous mentality in the public, and that is we can find just about anything we want to find out on the web, probably for free. And of course, the third area that it's going to is virtual legal services. Can you say LegalZoom? What's happening is we're seeing a dramatic rise in those legal services delivered on the web. That's the commodity area. What does all this mean? Well, basically it means that the corner store model of the law practice is simply no longer viable. The profession has enjoyed a huge period of automatic supply. You could open a law practice, hang out your shingle, sit and wait for people to come in and ask you to serve them. Unfortunately, that's going away. Competition from all directions has increased and will increase dramatically. Supply is simply no longer going to happen. You have to be as expert in marketing and sales as you are in the work itself. Matter of fact, I have a favorite saying, and that is that it really doesn't matter how good your skills are if no one asks you to help them. So all of that being said, the fact that commodity services are beginning to move away from the legal profession, how do you change your consumer's perception of your services? Are you a commodity, a brand name? Are you hired for experience, or are you that person that handles the nuclear event? Looking back at the Cobb value curve, what you need to understand is for you to survive and thrive in the legal profession, you need to do one of two things. Primarily, most attorneys want to push themselves up the value curve. Not being seen as a commodity, but being seen as brand name or hired for experience or a nuclear event. Here's one of the most important things that I can tell you. It's not about the product. The consumer's perception of you is not about what you do, it's about how they perceive your value in the process. You see, strangers buy products and commodities and price, but referred prospects are looking for service, reputation, experience, value, and security. Let me explain this a little bit more. If someone contacts you out of the phone book or off the web, their first question usually is, how much do you charge for? It's all about the price. It's all about, I just need this one thing. What do you charge? When someone has a problem and they seek advice of others before they go to a lawyer, they ask, who can I trust? Who should I go to that I can put my problem in their hands and make sure it's taken care of? So what happens when someone is referred to you is they already come into you perceiving you at a different level than as though you were a stranger. If someone I trust trusts you, then you must have a higher value than someone that I might find in the yellow pages or on the web. Consumers find products through advertising, through the web, through television, radio, through newspapers, magazines, billboards, and some word of mouth. But services are found through referrals by and large, through professional referrals. If I have a problem, I might ask my CPA or my doctor or someone else who I already trust. There's also an area of publicity. I read an article that you wrote, or I saw an article where you were quoted as an expert, and this can establish you as up the scale a little ways. There's also a significant amount of word of mouth there as well. This is sort of a little different level of word of mouth. So let me reiterate what we're talking about here. The bottom line is when someone comes to you because they're referred to you, they already perceive you at a higher value. Therefore, two things happen. Number one is, generally, they walk into your office expecting that if everything goes all right, they're going to hire you, but they've already made a tentative decision to hire you. The second is, they perceive you with a greater level of trust and also having a greater level of expertise. Again, because they ask someone they already trust and value, and they recommended you. So the bottom line is that referrals are the strongest way to build your sense of value. In essence here, what I'm saying is, when someone gives a prospect your name, you have just at that moment become a brand in that person's mind. So you've been branded one person at a time. So you can think of branding in a little bit different way. You can try and spend thousands and millions of dollars to develop a general awareness in the population, or you can do it one at a time through developing strong referral sources. Now, there is a lot of confusion and concern around marketing. There's a lot of concern that there's a level of it which is unethical or sleazy. So I want to explain basically the ABA rules, which are matched by the Florida Bar rules pretty closely, around the issue of marketing. The restrictions in the rules are about solicitation without prior contact. You can't go around knocking on people's doors saying, hey, do you need a lawyer? You can't stop people in the street. If they have inquired, that sort of breaks that boundary. That's not solicitation. There's also an issue about soliciting paid referrals, referral mills. This is also unethical. But there are some very, very strong and clear exemptions that you need to be aware of. First of all, the rules do not apply to any communications between lawyers. Now, what that means is you could theoretically send a letter out to every licensed lawyer in the country saying very simply, hey, I'm a lawyer here in Florida and I do thus and so. So if you need anybody in Florida, send them to me. You would be completely and totally ethical because communications between lawyers is ethical. Now this goes one little step further into lawyers who happen to be counsel for businesses. You can also talk directly to them. So any communication between lawyers is ethical. Now that said, I want to back up for a moment. unsolicited letters or calls from strangers to other lawyers are generally simply tossed. So there's still that need to develop some kind of connection or relationship, even in that situation. Now, that said, there's nothing to stop you from writing letters to the councils of business, the general counsels, the licensed lawyers. It's not a terribly effective way to market, but there's nothing unethical about it. Also excluded here, and this is an important exclusion, is all communications with clients or former clients or anyone who has ever requested information from you. Now, that's as simple as at a cocktail party, someone says, and what do you do? That just opened up the line of communication. You now have the ability to communicate with that person completely ethically. So, bottom line here is personal referral marketing is asking for referrals. It's not soliciting business. It is asking other professionals to refer people to you who need your help. Now, let me add a little more subtle caveat in there. A lot of attorneys feel like that's imposing on people as well. Well, ideally what you're really doing is you're setting up a relationship, let's say with a CPA or a doctor or a therapist or an engineer or other professional, other lawyer for that matter, who may have a client or a loved one, a family member who needs some help that they can't deliver. And so in that respect, you're setting up a relationship where you become a resource for that other person. That other person is glad to know you because they have a level of trust in you so that they feel comfortable in referring their friends, their family, their own clients to you because they trust in the level of service and your integrity. So referral relationships, the ideal referral relationships are actually sort of mutual resources for people. You may very well refer to another attorney or a doctor or so forth as well because of that same personal relationship. So referrals is not using other people. It's becoming a resource to other people. So, I want to sort of lay down some very specific steps for you in creating a process that attracts prospects and helps you turn them into clients. The first step is to create awareness. First, they have to know you exist, or at least remember somehow that you are there. The next is when that person has gotten to the point where they have discovered you and call you, then you have to create a positive initial contact and impression. Third step is the interview process itself. At that moment when you're sitting together with that prospect and going through an effective interview process. Think of this in other contexts. If you've ever gone in and applied for a job and you go through an interview process, in effect, you're selling yourself to that person who might hire you. So the same thing is happening when that client comes into you. They're interviewing you to determine whether or not they want to hire you. So you want to make sure that you focus on making that moment in time as effective as possible. And finally, as they say in the world of sales, and by the way, it's time that we started using that word sales even in the practice of law, because there is a moment at which, after the interview, after the discussion, after the relationship has started to develop, that you want to be able to move that person from thinking about it to saying yes. So, how do you create awareness? How do people find you? There are really only about 4 ways that people find you. They were told about you, or they were referred to you. They saw your name someplace in some advertising. They read about you, an article you wrote, something about you, someplace that you were quoted as an expert, or they saw you or met you someplace. That's essentially it. all of the things fit into that category. A listing in Martindale-Hubbell is advertising, essentially. Your website is advertising. So there are really only 4 ways that people find you. Personally, met you someplace, found out about you, read about you somehow, saw some advertising, or were personally referred to you. The reasons I emphasize this is I want to help you start developing sort of a framework to do your marketing. And these are indeed the 4 layers of your marketing. You need to be active in all 4 of these layers to have an effective marketing program. So, let's talk about personal referral marketing. This has always been for lawyers sort of the core of their businesses. In most cases. In the last 20 years, there's been a lot about advertising, but this has been the core. And frankly, referral marketing brings you the best clients. Before I do that, though, I want to make some distinctions here. When I talk about referral marketing, people often say, oh, I do a lot of networking. Networking and referral marketing are radically different. Networking is basically a mile wide and an inch deep. It's the person working the room. You've seen it. There's no real emphasis on relationship building, rapport, information gathering. It's all about sales. It's trolling for clients. Referral marketing, the key word in referral marketing is relationship. You want to develop a relationship with that referral source. The important thing is that that referral source has a level of trust in you. That's why they will prefer to send someone to you rather than someone else. Referred clients are better because, as I said before, usually when someone comes into you because they've been referred, tentatively or perhaps even consciously, they've made a decision to probably hire you. So you've already gone past one of the trust barriers. There's a thing called transfer of relationship. And that is, if I trust my CPA and my CPA trusts you, then by inference, I can trust you. So when that stranger walks in the room, some person you've never seen before, it's really important that you know exactly where that person came from, whether it was the web or a personal referral, because the relationship will start at a completely different level. So referred clients are better because they come in with that initial relationship. There's less price resistance because, as I said before, essentially you've already been branded. You've already moved up that relationship or that scale of value. You're no longer seen as a commodity lawyer. So even though that person may have something fairly simple that could theoretically be classified as a commodity, they're not looking for commodity service. They're looking for someone that they have a higher level of trust in. So there's less price resistance. They effectively will not be surprised or even expect to pay a little more than if they did something on the web or from one of the strangers. When someone comes into you with a higher level of trust, it sets up the longer-term relationship for a better relationship ongoing because you've already passed some of the trust barriers. Nicest thing about referral marketing is it's cheap. It doesn't really cost that much. It's really about your time, investing your time in building relationships. And the best referral sources actually send you the best clients. They actually will tend to filter for you. They won't send you people they know can't pay. They won't send you people that want something that you don't do. So they actually become part of your filtering process. And this is exactly the path from being perceived as a commodity to brand name or hired for experience. So again, let me reiterate, it's not the service you deliver. It's the perception of the client of who you are. So someone may come to you for something that's fairly simple, but they went through the gateway of their CPA. So they're looking for someone that they can trust. In the years that I've taught marketing, I finally realized I haven't really been talking about why you don't get referrals. And this is sort of the reciprocal of all of this. First of all, you don't get referrals or business of any sort because they don't know you. They don't know you exist or don't hardly know you. The impression is either non-existent, they don't know you're out there, or it's so shallow that they didn't think of you at the moment that they needed a certain service. So gaining that awareness is the first step. The next is, and it's interesting because I find this applies very much even to experienced lawyers with lots of clients. Very often that client doesn't know what you do in a couple of different ways. Number one is they may know that you do X type of service because they've used you for that, but they don't know you also do Y and Z. The other is they may not know at what level you work. They know that you did something very complex for them or something very simple, but they don't know the other extent of that work that you do. The third is they didn't think of you at the moment that they needed you. They didn't remember you. And that, particularly for referrals, is an issue that we'll deal with one of the other four fundamentals. So they may know you very well, but the fact is they haven't seen you in 6 months, or the article they read was 1.5 years ago. So that made a strong impression then, but it's been so long that they forgot you. The fourth, and particularly for lawyers with experience, very often the client thinks you're too good or too busy. I had a personal experience some years ago I was working with the incoming president of the Illinois Bar. Very large, established relationship, referral marketing. Almost all of his clients came through referral marketing. And we saw an interesting phenomenon as he was approaching becoming president of the bar. His referrals started dropping off dramatically from his established sources, people who had known him for 20, 30 years. We actually went out and interviewed some of his referral sources. These are good old friends. And what do you think they said? They said, well, Bob, you're a high mucky muck now. You're president of the bar. You don't need my little old piddly referrals. Well, the truth is he did. 3-lawyer firm, family law. His wife was one of the other lawyers. You bet he needed those little referrals. But the perception was keeping even his most trusted referral sources from sending him business. So there's a lot about the communications that you have, the continuing communications that you have with all of your referral sources and even your clients. The next is they think you're too expensive. This is a regular perception with senior lawyers, with older lawyers who come in with a lot of history, a lot of background. They think that they can't afford you. So again, the conversations are important here. Younger lawyers have the other side of the problem, and that is they may think you're too inexperienced or essentially not good enough. There are very specific conversations that I teach my younger clients to overcome that particular barrier. But be aware that if you're a younger lawyer, that's going to be one of the unspoken questions in the mind of most of your prospects. Well, you're young, you don't have enough experience, or you may not know the law. One of my favorite phrases is that you always want to hire a young doctor and an old lawyer. So people tend to see age as a factor of experience, expertise, and wisdom. So in that situation, younger lawyers have to consciously counter that perceived disadvantage. And the last one I can't help you with. They might have a relative who's a lawyer, so there's not much I can do there. Over the years, I've taught programs, 7 building blocks, 9 marketing keys. But over the years, what I've really found is it's just not that complicated. It's not rocket science. There are really only 4 basic principles. The first is talk to the right people. Second is build trust relationships. Again, the key word there is relationships. Third is let them know what you do and what kind of people you work with. And fourth is stay in contact consistently over time. Let's walk through those. Principle 1 says talk to the right people. Consistent referrals are sent to you by people who know you, like you, and trust you, and are happy to help. Let me reiterate this. When you have built a strong relationship with another professional, or for that matter, even a well-placed client, the relationship is the bond. The best referral sources are what I call an A-level referral source. And essentially, that's a friend. A friend knows us, likes us, trusts us, and want us to be successful. So they're consciously working, for instance, to refer us business, to help us be successful. But a real key in referral marketing is that there's another quality that's important, and that is with your best referral sources, these people need to be well placed. Therefore, they have the ability over time to regularly send you referrals. So this is not to negate the personal value of friends, but in terms of building your business and your revenues, you want to identify those people who have very high potential to refer you business regularly. If you do estate planning, it might be financial planners or CPAs, other lawyers very often. People who have on a consistent basis, people come into their office looking for help with something that they can't do that they can refer to you. This is the difference between focusing on client relationships or former client relationships and referral relationships. Many people tell me they get a lot of business from former clients, and that's excellent. That often means they have a very, very large base of former clients, because the fact is that most former clients only have a random ability to refer you business. They might love to send you lots of business, but they just don't have that many opportunities. So for your business building, you need to be focusing on the professionals who are well placed with the types of people who might use your services. In effect, what I'm saying here is you want to avoid MBWA. MBWA is marketing by wandering around. That's what will produce frustration for you and have you decide it just doesn't work. It's sort of shotgun marketing. I'm going to go out there and going to wander around and see who I run into. And you need to have a little bit more focus than that. So I've given you an exercise in the handout on page 9. It says identify your current referral sources. This is actually one of the most important pieces that I can give you here. Because if you use this one page effectively, or you use this as a template, and you stay focused on it, you can significantly increase your revenues over the coming year. Because this simple sheet has you list everyone who is currently referring you business. And by the way, once you finish that list, you can start identifying who are the other people that I need to develop relationship with who could refer me business. So you want to list them by name. You want to identify what type of person they are, what category they fall into, attorney, CPA, so forth. Because as you go through the list, you want to start identifying what are the types of people who have the highest potential. Therefore, where do I need to identify more people to add to my referral list? So name, type of person, and then their potential to send you business. So essentially what you want to do is you want to make up this list, and then you want to, and forgive the crass phrase here, rate them as to their potential to send you business. Because over time, you're going to want to focus on those people with the highest potential. The next, you want to measure your current level of relationship with them, because relationship is what drives referrals. So you want to identify, okay, this person has a very high potential to refer me business, but I have a very low level of relationship with them. So you want to be able to be really clear where you want to focus your time and your relationship building. And the last, and this is the one that usually makes attorneys blush, is you want to try to identify how long has it been since I've actually had some substantive contact with that potential referral source. The traditional referral relationship without focus and training, just what's built over the years, very often you will receive referrals from people that you haven't talked with in months or sometimes even years. And that's a referral relationship that's at risk, because at someday they're going to forget you, or someday they're going to decide that there's someone else they have a higher level of relationship with. So the bottom line is you want to make sure that you're giving strong attention to those people with the highest potential and maintaining or even building the level of relationship. So if you were to maintain that simple sheet, you see, the principle behind this is that what I have invariably found is even those people who have a good referral stream of business haven't ever really sat down to quantify that. Exactly who are the people that are referring me business? How do I make sure that I'm staying in contact with them? Or if a name comes in that I don't recognize, that's a perfect opportunity to initiate a new relationship. So the first thing that you want to do, by the way, and I'll touch on this later, is you want to make sure that one of the first pieces of information that you collect when someone contacts you is, how did you find me? Because that, as you'll see as we go forward, will be an important tool in how you relate to that prospect and help them decide to make the decision to hire you. So principle 2 is build trust relationships with your referral sources. How do you do that? The easiest way that I can explain that is reflect on how you maintain and build relationships in your personal life. You get to know people. Very simply, you get to know them. So for referral marketing, you want to actually have a tool, some type of a database that you can use to supplement your memory. You can use case management software or contact management software, or even Outlook. That's a program I don't like very much, but most people use it, so we're kind of stuck with it. All of these have places that you can make notes about what you know about people, to have information to help build a relationship. So what you want to know is things such as their assistant's name, their kids' names, their spouse's names, the things that they enjoy doing, hobbies, interests, where they went to school, birthdays, anniversaries, favorite restaurants, things of that sort. All of that information that you would naturally know about your friends, you want to start consciously building. Because what you want to do is you want to make sure that you are fully aware of that person, so that you know that you begin to know them personally. Understand that in the relationship building process, insincerity is a killer. It's the guy in the white suit. I'm fond of saying in a lot of my communications, and I will say it later on, 80% of all communication is nonverbal. So the fact is, look at your own experience. You know when someone is real or unreal, when someone is playing a game or someone is genuinely interested in you. So going out there, playing the role of glad-hander or whatever it is, just pushes people away. So what I often say to my clients is, this isn't about marketing. Don't go out there with your marketing suit on and start acting like you're marketing. That's what people hate. That's what drives people away. You want to be sincerely interested in people. You want to listen and remember things about them. You want to relax. Don't go out there with your marketing suit on. Go out there looking to build relationships, to essentially, to simplify it, to meet new friends. And the only sort of selectivity is identifying new friends that might have high potential to refer your business. One of the best things that you can do early on in relationships is to look for things you have in common. Find common ground. What is it, what interests or what focus do you share that you share some common ground about? Again, from that nonverbal lexicon, at an instinctive level, who do I like? People who are like me. So when you can find common ground, you immediately find the place to start building relationships. An interesting thing that goes on. Have you ever met someone and very early in a conversation they say, "Oh, and what do you do?" The person who is not adept at marketing sees this as an opening. Oh, great, now I can give them my story, I can sell them, I can tell them all about me. Watch the next time that happens because people's eyes glaze over. The fact is, early in a relationship, when someone asks you what you do, they really don't care. It's the courtesy question. It's the question we all ask as just one of those perfunctory early questions. So be very careful in how you respond to that first question. And what do you do? Give them just that much information and let them absorb that. If they actually want to know more, they will ask. But if you give them a flood of information, we're immediately doing that. And they immediately start backing. Watch for the nonverbal signals. That will tell you more than anything else. Do people do the unconscious step back? Do they look away? Or do they lean toward you? Do they look straight at you? You can tell from the nonverbal signals whether you're making that connection. Consciously gauge and learn from other people's reactions as to where you want to be on that line. So for instance, you might very well say on that first meeting, someone you've never met before, they say, "And what do you do?" And you say, "Oh, I'm a lawyer." And they'll go, "Oh, do you?" They're already ready for more information. But very often, they will go, "Uh-huh," and that's all they want to know. They really didn't care. So understand that initially, you should only give them just a slight bit of information and let them decide if they want more. Now, you will know that the relationship is progressing when, and hopefully when, at some point they actually ask you to tell them more. Now they're ready to hear it. Now their brains are open. Now they want more information. So that might look like, "Oh, you're a lawyer. Now I didn't remember. What kind of law do you practice? What is it you do?" Now you can tell by the language, by the tone of voice, by the body language, that they're ready to receive more information. So this is where we lose an awful lot of valuable relationships within that first minute or two of contact, because people are looking for fakes. People are naturally just a little careful in how they relate to other people. So in that first 30 seconds, you have the opportunity to begin the process of building relationship. So wait until they want to know more to give them that other information. Important piece of this is where the relationship building sort of becomes more conscious and more planned. We normally and naturally remember things about our friends. So the way that you can enhance and sort of speed up the relationship developing process is to make sure that you remember what people tell you. People are constantly giving us information. They want us to know about them, their personal lives, what they do, what they are interested in, things of that sort. They tell us, but we often don't listen. So what you want to do is when you meet someone, not only, first of all, put them into your database, but then make notes on anything you remember about the conversation. This will allow you to bridge the relationship later. I'll explain that a little bit more. Because when you meet that person and you're able to develop a little bit of rapport and you're listening and they're giving you information, they're telling you about something, here's your opportunity to build on that relationship. Gee, you know, I really enjoyed talking with you. I'd love to hear more about so-and-so. Maybe we can get together for lunch one day. You have a business card? So when you go back to the office, put that business card information into your database. Make some notes on the conversation. And next time, at that point, by the way, calendar it for, let's say, 5-7 days out to call and recontact that person. Now, this is where the relationship begins to develop. A couple of ways you can go about this. Gee, you and I met at the chamber meeting, and I thought we ought to get together. Would you like to have lunch? No. That's one conversation. The other conversation is, hey, I met you at the chamber meeting, and you were telling me about this running club that you're involved in. You know, I've really been wanting to get back into running. I'd love to hear more about what you're doing there, and maybe I can join you one day. Why don't we have lunch on Friday? The difference is there's a personal connection. Number one, I remembered something about you. Number two, I found something that we have a common interest in that we can connect on. Number three is, this is not a solicitation. This is getting together as friends and building relationship. Hey, I'm interested in you as a person. So understand that without relationship, you won't have referrals. They're very rare. You might occasionally get one out of the phone book or Martindale-Hubbell, but what you will live on is referrals from people who know you, like you, trust you. So your focus on building and maintaining those relationships is crucial to your success. Because what this will do will allow you to avoid Groundhog Day. Now, what do I mean by Groundhog Day? Well, Groundhog Day looks like this. You call somebody up, hey, I haven't seen you for a while, let's go have lunch. So you go have lunch. And you say, hey, what's going on, what's new, and they tell you. And 3 months later, you give them a call, say, hey, I haven't seen you in a while, let's get together for lunch. You go to lunch and you say, hey, what's new, and they tell you. Groundhog Day. The same day over and over again. All you need to do is listen in that first conversation. Ask them what's going on with their family, or they tell you about their vacation, or their wife in the hospital, or their kid going to a new school. When you call them up 3 months from now, all you have to do is say, hey, let's get together. I want to see how your wife's doing after the whatever it is. Sit down at that table and say, hey, tell me how your ski vacation was. And all you have to do for the next 20 minutes is nod and smile. Because you've hit a warm button, you've hit a hot button for them, something they like to talk about, but the underlying strength of that is, you remembered something about me. I must be important to you. So understand that in our highly intellectual world, 80% of our relationship happens here, not here. You want that person to get up from that lunch table, not going, this is a smart lawyer, he's a good guy, and he's got really good experience. What you want to have them say is, you know, I just really like her. Enjoy getting together with her every time. She's just great. That's what gets referrals. An attorney may have two people he knows who do the same type of work. One is a stranger, and he knows he's got really good experience, and he's probably a really good lawyer, and one is you, a personal friend. Now, at some point, he may say, well, you know, this guy's got 35 years of experience, Dave's only got 12, but, you know, I trust him, and this is not rock. I'm going to send it to my friend. So understand that your referrals will depend on your level of relationship, not just trust, but relationship. Remember that last piece, want to support you. So very often that will weigh the scale in your favor, even if they have someone else that they could refer to. Principle 3 is basically to educate people about what you do and who you work with. As I said before, one of the interesting things is that even experienced lawyers with large referral networks very often find, well, you may have experienced this yourself. Have you ever been talking to a client of yours, you're working with them on some project, and they start telling you about some other problem they're having in their life, and they hired an attorney to help them with that. And you look at them and you go, well, why didn't you talk to me about that? And they say, I didn't know you did that. This is typical. So you have clients who don't know you do that. You have referral sources who don't know you do that. You even have family and friends who don't know you do that. So it's important for you to develop conversational consciousness. How you speak powerfully and memorably about what you do so that people remember it. So this is really about consciously changing your communications. See, law school teaches you processes, procedures, skills, techniques. And naturally, that's what we want to explain to people. When someone comes in and says, I have a problem, can you help me? The natural tendency of the lawyer is to explain the process. Well, you know, first we'd have to file, and then we'd have to, and so forth, and then of course you answer the question, you know, well, can you help me? Depends. Well, the prospect comes in with a very simple question. I have a problem, can you help me? So the first answer is very simple. I think I can. Yes. So that's where it has to start. But beyond that, as you're speaking to people in general, speaking out there to your referral sources or at meetings or cocktail parties or so forth, someone asks you that basic question, what do you do? If you say, I'm a lawyer, that's not very helpful. It doesn't really mean much. And frankly, for the majority of people, it's not even positive information. So you got to understand that they're not looking, when someone asks you what you do and you say, I'm a lawyer, that doesn't say anything about what you do. That just says what badge you're wearing today. All right, and that's not helpful. So you want to learn to speak about what people are interested in, and that's the value or the benefit or the results that you can deliver, not the process and skills that you'll use to get them there. The more that you speak about process and skills, the more frightened they get. Because what happens here, they start seeing the cash, they see the meter running. They start to get scared. So you want to learn how to speak about your value and your benefits and not your process. So for instance, I do real estate. So what? Nobody wants a mortgage. Nobody wants a closing. Nobody wants title insurance. What do they want? I got 3 kids since we bought this house. It's too small. I need to move into a bigger house for my family. I need to move into a better school district. I need more space, something. You, by and large, your processes, your skills, your forms are part of the obstacles. When you start explaining the obstacles, they get nervous. You want to help them move to what they want. So instead of saying, when somebody asks you, what do? I do real estate. What do you really do? I help families move into new homes. I had a wonderful conversation some years ago. I regularly do 1-hour practice evaluations. As a matter of fact, you'll find the form in the kit in this information. And during that 1-hour sort of coaching session, I'll go through and help people understand a lot of these people and give them some coaching on marketing or practice management. And I was talking to this one young lady out in Oklahoma, and she'd been to one of my seminars, and she was doing the practice evaluation. And I'll admit I was trying to trap her. So I said, "So what do you do?" And I was waiting to correct her from her skills and techniques. She surprised me. She said, "I help people to move into new homes and get new babies." And I had to laugh. I had to stop. I said, "That's absolutely perfect." She says, "Well, that's because that's what I really love about what I do. That's the thing that I enjoy so much, is seeing happy families and happy new parents with new babies." So what is it that you gain for people or accomplish for people that give you that moment at the end of the day when you feel like, you know, done good today. This was a good day. And I guarantee it's not going through the closing process. It's not getting the bank to send the final papers over. It's not just that. It's the fact that you made a difference in somebody else's life. So instead of saying, "I do real estate," you might say, "I help families move into new houses, move new homes." Estate planning. Nobody wants an estate plan. It's part of the obstacle to get what they want. What do they really want? Well, I help people protect their families and their loved ones. That's what they want to do. "I'm a divorce lawyer." Don't ever say that. Nobody wants a divorce. Even if they want a divorce, they're not ready to let people know that they want one. So if you say I'm a divorce lawyer, you're going to see people doing the two-step. You're going to see people heading for the shrimp dip, because they don't want to be around that, even if it's in their mind. So what is it you say? Help people work through bad family situations. Something like that. One of the nicest ads I've ever seen is in a little local publication in my suburban area around Orlando in Longwood. It's a little weekly publication, and it's a family law attorney in the Lake Mary area, and it's one of the nicest little pieces I've seen. It's her picture, looking professional but warm and friendly, and it says, "Helping people through bad family situations." It's as simple and as inviting as you get. So even family law, I do family law. Well, that's not only vague, but it's somehow vaguely threatening. Okay, so I do collections. Well, that's nice. I hope I never have to do collections. I hope I never have to need somebody to do collections. What do I want? I just want to get paid what I'm owed. So if you do collections, you just help people get paid what they're owed. That's what they want. They don't want the collections process. Oh, here's one of my favorites. I do personal injury. I'm going to tell you a quick story. About 3 years ago, I was working with a guy in Sarasota who had left a work comp firm to start his own PI firm. And shortly after he left, he called me. And he said, "I'm starting my own personal injury firm, and I'd like to have your help." Of course, the first thing I said to him is, "You sure you want to do that?" Because right now, personal injury is, how should I say, everywhere. And of course, you know who everybody's competing with. So we worked together, and he was being surprisingly successful very early because he was applying a lot of the specific techniques that I was giving him. But one day he called me and he says, "I think I'm going to die tonight. I think somebody's going to murder me tonight." I said, "Really? How so? What's going on?" And he says, "Well, my brother-in-law is a hospital administrator, and he's having a holiday cocktail party, and I know there's going to be 75 or 100 doctors there. And I got to go. What am I going to say that's not going to get me knifed with a scalpel?" So we discussed this. And what he said when he went to that cocktail party, when one of those doctors asked him what he did, he said this. He said, "Well, you know, I'm kind of, same kind of thing that you do, just a little bit different place down the line. He said, you know, you patch people up when they're hurt physically, and I try to patch them up when they're hurt financially. That's a really different way to think about personal injury. See, you don't do personal injury. Nobody does personal injury. That's already happened. What you do is you help them heal from personal injury, and you help them heal financially. So nobody does personal injury. They work with people who've been injured. So what do? You help people put their lives back together when they've been hurt. That's really what you do. Okay, so I do bankruptcy. What about that? Well, I help people work through bad financial situations. That's why they come to you. I'm in a bad financial situation. Help me get through it. You see, when you speak your value, your benefit, your result, people get it. People start to see how it applies to them personally or someone they're personally close to. They get it at the gut level. And why? Because you've actually gotten it. Let me reiterate this. Nobody wants a lawyer. Nobody wants a lawyer. What they want is something that they need a lawyer to help them get. They didn't come to you because they wanted to hire you. They came to you because that's what they got to do to get what they really want. So when you start talking lawyer to people, you push them away. They already don't trust lawyers, and now you're making it worse. What they want is that thing over here that only you can help them get. So you need to be able to right up front learn how to speak in a way that people get right off the top. This is somebody I need to talk with. This is somebody I need to get my brother in touch with. That's what'll make the difference. People at the gut level get what you do, your benefit to them or someone else. Importantly, it does something else. When your family, your referral sources, other people who know you, hear you speaking that, you're actually training them to speak that for you to other people. One of the places we actually lose business, and I do these exercises in my seminars. I ask attorneys, I say, okay, how many of you are married? Raise their hand. I say, okay, what would your spouse say if someone asked them what you do? And the answer is usually, well, they'd say, I'm an attorney. Or they'd say, I do personal injury. And I say, notice how that's not very helpful. Not when you say it, not when they say it. But when they heard you say, you help people get their lives back together when they've been hurt, and they start saying it to other people, they're much better able to support you. They're much better able to do what they want to do. For that matter, right down to your referral sources. You have got good referral sources. People who know you, like you, trust you, have lots of opportunity to send you business. They're giving people your name, and those people aren't calling. Why? Because what they said is, oh, I know a good divorce lawyer. I know somebody who can help with personal injury. So they, in effect, were not speaking powerfully enough about you to have that person act on their reference. So when they have better language, you're going to get more referrals. My guesstimate, I have no way of estimating this, but my guesstimate is that you get less than a third of the referrals than the people are referring to you. Not all of them call. So one of the places that you can increase your revenues is by helping your referral sources, your family members, those people who know you, be able to speak more effectively and powerfully for you. As a matter of fact, you might even do this exercise with a good referral source, somebody that you can refer to as well. Sit down with them and say, gee, you know, I'd really like to be able to refer more business to you, but I'm not quite sure what you would like me to say about you. What is it you do for people? Sort of talk them through this exercise and help them develop what their value and their results are as well, so that you can then speak powerfully about them. This then opens the door for you to say, great, that's super. I'll make sure that I say that, explain what you do, and I'll refer you as much business as I can because I want you to get that business. So, here's what I would like you to say about me. Help them learn more effective ways to refer to you. As a matter of fact, if you can, give them something tangible to give to that person. I'm not talking business card or brochure. I'm talking about an article that you wrote or some information about a big case that you won or something or other, so that that person has something tangible and helpful and useful that they can read. For instance, if you do family law. Oh, I know a really good person who helps people through bad family situations. As a matter of fact, they wrote a great article on the 10 things you need to think about before you file for divorce. Now they have useful information that helps you become higher in their mind and also starts that chain of trust. Number one, somebody I trust referred you to me. Number two, they gave me an article that I read that was really interesting and helpful and valuable. So by the time they come to your door, and they will come to your door in a higher percentage, by the time they come to your door, they pretty well made the decision. You're the person they're going to hire. So this is about building that chain of trust, but also about making sure that you're speaking powerfully about yourself and you're speaking powerfully about those people you're referring to. Now, so you have a great referral source that has sent you business of a certain kind frequently, but you're not quite sure they know you do something else. So how do you do that without just sort of putting it in their face? Everybody gives you the opportunity every time you talk with them. They say, hey, how you doing? What's new? What's going on with you? It's a perfect opportunity to tell a little story. Oh, you know, really interesting thing happened. I was working with this person doing so-and-so, and you just tell them a little war story about something you're not quite sure they know that you do. So you just tell them a little conversational war story that has a point. Actually, several points. Number one is, I do this. Number two, these are the kinds of people I do it for. And number three, I'm damn good at it. But it's just a story. I call this sort of under-the-radar education. It's just a story about what's happening now, as they say. But it's a conscious story. It's a conscious conversation that communicates and educates without them really noticing that you're putting it in their face. Okay, principle 4, and this, by the way, is the one most consistently missed by attorneys, even good marketers. Consistent contact over time. What do I mean by that? Well, see, people who market have sort of an instinctive and traditional pattern. And that is, if business is really good, then I'm not marketing very much. And if business starts to go down, I get excited and afraid and I market more. So we've got this sort of up and down cycle of being out there. Well, that doesn't work very well. I call that flurry marketing. It doesn't really build relationships. You go out there with an air of desperation on you. People kind of see it in the, when they see the whites of your eyes. It doesn't build habit patterns around your marketing. It's simply something you have to go out and do now that's not really part of your normal day. It's frustrating because it's just not very effective. You go out there feeling afraid, feeling desperate, feeling frustrated, worried. So when we go to that nonverbal communication part, think of the nonverbal message that you're giving when you're out there in this state. Now, the other part of flurry marketing is it's not planned. I may do it occasionally, but I do it again kind of MBWA. I go talk to a bunch of people, but I don't really have a plan or a structure. The most successful marketing pattern has two characteristics. Number one is that I market consistently, and my basic rule, by the way, is 5 proactive contacts a week minimum. Now, that doesn't mean all lunches. That can mean a lunch, couple of phone calls, an email, thank you note for a referral, at least 5 proactive contacts. Now, if you meet somebody out in the street and you have a great conversation, that's a gimme. That doesn't count. That's just an extra. 5 proactive contacts a week. So consistent activities, so you have a consistent level of being in action on marketing, and that, by the way, will consistently over time produce higher revenues because you're in the process of building and maintaining relationships. The other piece of this, however, is a plan to make sure that you're in contact regularly with each referral source. So if you go back to that form that I'm talking about, that identify referral sources form, one of the most important pieces there is, when did I contact them last? Because you want to make sure that you stay in contact with everyone consistently over time. So just doing flurry marketing and seeing the same 6 or 7 people every time you do it misses a huge part of your referral base, or potential referral base. So consistent contact over time does something very important. It maintains top-of-mind awareness. You're top of mind with people when they have that opportunity to refer to you. This is why. This is one of the 7 reasons you don't get referrals. I haven't seen you in a year and a half. You're not present in my brain. Yeah, you're a good friend, but I forgot. One of my favorite phrases is, you'd worry a lot less about what people thought of you if you realized how seldom they did. We all live busy lives. We all have a zillion things going on. And to expect that my friends are constantly thinking about me is just pure egotism. They got their own stuff going on. So it's my job to make sure that I'm staying in contact on a regular basis so that those friends think about me, so that I don't drop off their radar into oblivion. It's exactly the same way with your referral sources. And remember, for the most part, we're building relationships that become those lifelong friends. That's really what we want. And by the way, when you approach your marketing in this way, genuinely, it really enhances your personal life, because what you're really doing is you're building a larger group of people around you who know you, like you, trust you, want you to be successful, happy to help you. And that's a good feeling, to have those people around you. So consistent contact over time maintains that top-of-mind awareness. It helps you build and maintain relationships. It also does something extremely important, and it's really it's one of the 5 components of the entire coaching process, and it's called rehabituation. Years ago, I worked with a CPA JD in Jacksonville. And just when I say CPA JD, you already know his personality type. Extremely introverted. And so he called me and he said, the firm is really pressuring me to start bringing in some business. I'm always the guy that works with everybody else, but they really want me to start marketing. And so I need your help. So we began to work, and I said, okay, one of the key things that we're going to do is we're going to have you every week, because we have weekly coaching calls, every week I'm going to assign you to have at least 5 proactive marketing contacts a week. And there was this long pause, and I could just hear the sweat beads popping out on his forehead. There was this long pause, and he said, 5? I said, yeah, 5. I said, but remember, they don't all have to be personal. They don't have to be out there glad-handing or anything else. You know, shoot for one lunch with somebody, send a couple of emails, a couple of phone calls, make sure that if business does come to you, you write them a personal note of thanks. That counts. So 5 marketing contacts. There's nobody that's so busy that they can't send out a quick email to one of their contacts. Hey, haven't seen you in a heck of a long time. Coattails are on fire right now. Sure would like to get together one of these days real soon. Hope things are good for you. That's a 30-second email. That counts. That helps maintain that top-of-mind awareness. But the fact is that as we work together, you know, in the first month or so, he was like, oh, well, I made 3 this week, and he struggled. But by the end of our coaching period, which is about 6 or 7 months, as we finished up, I said, I kind of want to go over what we've achieved so far, where you are with your marketing and so forth. But first, I want to ask about your homework. And he said, well, I knew you would. And I wasn't really sure I did my 5 this week, but I went back and looked at my calendar. Actually, I did 7. So what had happened is just like going to the gym. When you do something consistently over time, it gets easier and more natural and just part of the day. The best marketers don't even notice. It's just how their practice, how their day, how their week works. It's just a normal part of the day. So that's where you want to get. You want to go from not enough marketing to, okay, I'm marketing, to, oh, yeah, sure, I do that. Because it's just normal for you. And that will not happen if you're not consciously sort of pushing yourself over time and building structures around that. So essentially, I've given you on page 14 in your handout a whole slew of information on kinds of things that you can do for marketing activities. If you have any question on the kinds of things you can do, take a look at that. It'll give you a lot of good suggestions. Okay, how does advertising fit in this? Should you advertise? Well, before I go into all of it, I will say essentially yes. However, where and how you advertise is the real issue. So it may be a simple little piece in a charitable publication that says, you know, congratulations to the incoming board of directors of so-and-so provided by. It could be simply that small piece. The reason that's there is that you want to be high profile with that organization or simply with its board of directors. It's a courtesy ad, so there's always a place for that. The other issue is that you probably need to identify a specific segment that you can advertise in. But let me just kind of go through some of the pieces first. First of all, let's talk about some general guidelines. If you decide to advertise, here are some guidelines. The first thing you want to do is read the bar rules. Read them 4 times because, like anything written by lawyers, they're probably going to be a little obtuse. Okay, so read them and understand the guidelines. The next is to speak to your target person. Now, this goes back to a really, really basic issue here. If when somebody asks you what you do, you say, I love everything, or what do you need? You're in a really, really difficult marketing situation because essentially you want to try and sell anything to anybody. So how do you reach anybody? That's the really difficult part. So, one of the most important things that you can do is to identify exactly who your target person is. For what you do, what is the profile, what is the kind of person who would use your services. And then begin to identify, okay, what publications or media most completely hit that target. Now, in the general terms of advertising, that's called having the least waste circulation. I'm speaking to a highly segmented group of the population, most of which might be able to use my services. By the way, for those of you doing personal injury, this is one of the places that's very difficult for you, because personal injury is sort of by its nature accidental. So it's very difficult to identify a target market. However, in your case, the target might very well be the referral source group. But to come back to that, there is probably a place for you to advertise in some highly targeted medium. Find that medium and then design your image and message to match your target audience. Focus on building their trust, not laying out your credentials. Avoid legal jargon. Don't speak about your expertise, speak about their problems. Remember that little ad? Caring help for family problems. Very, very simple and concise. Don't give them a laundry list. I see websites that have these long lists of all of the things I do, and what I know when I look at it is I don't want to get lost in all that stuff. These are generalists. Too much detail loses a reader. By the way, one of the primary sources, primary mediums for advertising is the web. So websites are just advertising. So if you have a website that's filled with information, you have a problem. Because if someone's doing a search for you, strangers, you have between 3 and 5 seconds to hold their attention when they get to your website. So if you have a lot of detail that doesn't pull them in immediately, then you're probably going to lose them. If you have too many things listed, it says generalist, and it doesn't say the right person for my problem. The next thing you want your ad to do is to move that reader to action if possible. Call for a free fact sheet on, click here for an article on this. Make it easy for them to respond. That's why you see more and more websites that have a little email message box right on the home page says, contact us here or click here to talk directly with someone, all of these types of things. I think it's getting a little bit to overkill on that respect, but the concept is right. Make it very easy, very sort of instinctive for people to be able to contact you easily. The other thing that I find is people are fond of using legal symbols, gavels, courthouses, scales, and then things that mean nothing like skylines of their city, particularly on websites. And all of this is totally irrelevant to what they want and what you do. Now, it may be part of your process, but it's not actually what you do. Recognize that because you're good at the law doesn't mean that you're good at writing copy or designing ads. So rather than spending your money on something that you think looks really good, find someone who's a professional at designing the medium and the message that you want to put out. Next is important, and this again is one of the huge missings. If you're going to have any kind of advertising, and most of you should in terms of web, you need to know what the results are. You need to be able to quantify the value versus the cost. So you want to be able to, anytime you put an ad in, to be able to track how many calls or what responses received from that particular ad, how many inquiries did we get, how many appointments did we make, how many of those turned into clients, and what was the gross revenue from that particular, let's call it an advertising campaign. So in that respect, one of the key things that you need to use is an inquiry tracking form. When that phone rings and someone says, I wanted to talk to the attorney about so-and-so, we need to start gathering information. I'm sorry I didn't get your name. What's this concerning? Oh, and how did you find us? So we need to be able to actually track and measure to find out what's working and what isn't working. I mean, this was one of the classic situations with Yellow Pages over the years. Yellow Pages are starting to drop off a cliff, by the way. People would spend big money on Yellow Pages. And I'd say to them, well, does it work? And they'd say, yeah, well, we get a bunch of calls from it. I said, well, how many? Well, I don't know, a bunch. Well, how many appointments came out of the calls? I don't know. How much money did you make from your Yellow Pages ad? I don't know. Well, just, maybe throw it away, because you really don't know whether or not that's producing what you want. So measure it. So try to measure your advertising, and particularly just when the phone rings. It's very important. Now, let's go to the basic question about website. I am still amazed today at how many people do not have websites. Of course you need a website. You need it like you need a phone or a fax. Well, I'm not even sure about the fax anymore. A phone, email, sign on your door. I'm just thinking, we received a fax in my office the other day, and it was kind of a point of interest. Hey, look at that, we got a fax. Because almost everything comes in email with PDFs these days. But, off the subject. What's the purpose of a website? For the most part, the purpose of a website is a thing called validation. Someone is given your name by a friend or a referral source. And almost always today, the person that got your name will go check you out on the web. And so if they can't find you, they're one of those people that probably never calls. So validation is sort of the big number one. So even if, for instance, you're in Martindale-Hubbell, they're still going to go to your website to take a look and learn more about you. The next purpose of a website is selling for those strangers who know nothing about you. So this, by and large, is the commodity part of the practice, although a lot of my really good clients, for instance, the personal injury attorney in Sarasota, actually has designed his website to enhance his selectivity. This is one of the things that I talk about in terms of practice development, is making sure that you don't get immersed and bogged down in clients who aren't paying, bad clients, clients that are not in your area of expertise, things of this sort. So from the very beginning, we built some basic intake standards, and he would not take anything below those standards. So for instance, his website talks about if you've had a serious injury which involves a broken bone, things of that sort. So he put some of his criteria right on his website, which number one, reduces the stray calls, but number two, has people say, yeah, that's me. So that even on the web, they begin to say, this may be the right lawyer because he's asking the right questions. But the next thing is selling, commodity for the most part. The next is making sure that you're there when someone looks up estate planning lawyer, so that you're seen as part of the community. The next is education, and I can't overemphasize this. One of the things when some stranger comes to your website, you want to be able to begin that chain of trust by immediately offering them something that is helpful, valuable, and useful. So for instance, one of the types of things is FAQs, frequently asked questions. someplace where immediately on that website they can find helpful information. That begins to build the chain of trust. That was helpful, I think I'll call them. Now be careful that that, quote, useful information isn't just more sales information. You want to read it to determine if that person, if a prospect out there read this, never ever called, I never heard from them, did they get some help or some value from that? That's the key gauge of the education component of this. So whatever information you have there, you want to make it highly visible. You want to draw the person to it. And when they find that and read it, it is genuinely helpful, answers questions, helps them understand things, gives them some value immediately. Because you're in the process of building a chain of trust here. The next is service. More and more websites have a client component where clients can sign on through a separate portal, get information, look at status of cases, things of that sort. So it's a helpful thing. And the base version of this is for an estate planning attorney. There may be a basic preliminary form that you can fill out and forward to us so that we can begin the process of designing your estate plan. So more and more websites are having not only client portals, but also some of the basic forms that their clients are going to need to begin the process of work. Often how that works is a client will come in, or a prospect will come in, and sign up to work with you, and then now they're referred back to the website. Go to this, click on that, type in this, and you'll find this form. And all you have to do is push the button after you finished it, and that's received in our office, and that will help us move forward. So what should your website look like? There's a lot of information out there about websites, but I want to just try and make it simple here. One of the things that happens for us is we get drawn into the process, the skills, the techie stuff of websites. And it's very easy to lose sight of what we really want to accomplish. Remember I said earlier on, when a stranger Googles family law, estate planning, whatever, and they get a list, they click on your website, they go to it, you have 3 to 5 seconds to hold their attention before they go back and look at the next one. So you want to have an immediate visual impression that begins to capture their attention. It's the hook. It's the thing that has them stay there a little bit longer and look around. You want to have an uncluttered look because most people want to get an initial impression, and if there's a lot of words, a lot of information there, the impression is too busy, too much to absorb, go instinctively look for something simpler. Something that focuses the eye, something that draws the eye and holds the attention. It needs to be colorful, visually strong, not just gray and beige and so forth. You want to have again, nonverbal impression. And this is one of the places that it just drives me nuts that I see gavels and scales and courthouses and skylines. It has nothing to do with what you do. When someone goes to your website, whether they're referred or a stranger, there are 2 sort of instinctive questions in our mind. Do they do what I need? Who is this anyway? So you need to have the basic information on what you do, but they need to begin to make that personal contact. Go look at my website, for instance, attorneysmasterclass.com. 2 impressions you get immediately. Number 1 is what I do, and number 2 is who I am. So you can start making that personal connection. The next is make it easy to read so that they can get into it very quickly. Again, speak to your target audience. Make sure that it reflects the interest of those people you want to attract. Don't give them lawyer language, consumer language. Think of what that unschooled consumer would say they want when they walk in your office. Your prospects will tell you what to say because they will come in and they'll say, I have a problem with, can you help me with? You want to give them legal language, they just will tell you exactly how you can phrase that gets their attention. Again, you want to speak benefits and value, not processes and skills, and for that matter, credentials. Credentials are important, but they're down the line. They're something I go to once I've gotten a lot of information and want to be able to find out some of the final details. Completeness. You don't want to have them wondering about things. It answers all the initial questions of what you do, credentials, experience, information on you, and by the way, a bio shouldn't be, again, a whole laundry list of credentials and schools and dates. Part of what they want to know is, who is this person? So give them a flavor of who you are. Some of my favorite websites, the bios, have not only the formal professional picture, but one or two pictures of them in their personal lives with their family or something of that sort that begins to give a flavor of who that person is beyond being a lawyer. Make it easy to contact them, how they contact you, where you are, the hours of operation. Give them a contact form right on the website and a promised time to get back to them on it. Again, that FAQ or information resources. Fact is, if you have a bad website, it's probably as bad as not having any, because people are getting sophisticated. They can't define, they can't tell you in words exactly what makes a good website, but they sure know when they go to one and they go, ugh. That's as close as they're going to get, but they're gone and they're off to the next one. How do you increase its effectiveness? Well, first of all the things we talked about already. To capture their attention, give them the information. The next is a thing called search engine optimization, SEO. You can pay for this. A reputable organization that does website development can help you do optimization. Pay-per-click is AdWords. There are two places when you use Google that are paid. First of all is the right-hand column. There's a line down there. Those are all pay-per-click. In other words, your name can be posted there. And by the way, you may not be totally aware, but the net is so sophisticated that, for instance, when someone in Tallahassee Googles estate planning attorney, they will automatically get estate planning attorneys in their area, but also on that right column, only the ones in that general area will show up. So in other words, when you pay for that pay-per-click over there, you're not getting circulation in California. You're getting it in your general area. The thing about pay-per-click is you only pay when somebody actually goes over there and clicks on it and goes to your website. So it's kind of a coin-operated way to do advertising. Those at the top, in the slightly shaded box at the top, they are paid to be in that position. They're not pay-per-click, they're paid. They're paid advertising positions. All the rest are search engine, and that comes from the search engine optimization that someone has done to get you ranked higher in Google. And that's about as technical as I want to get with it. One of the ways that you can enhance this search engine is to regularly add, change, update things on your website. That allows those things that identify it, by the way, they're just called spiders, but the automated processes that helps rank things, that's one of the things that helps move it up, is it's new. There's something new on it. And video is a big thing that will bump that up quite a ways if you add video and change that as well. Fast word about blogs. Blogs are really easy, they're really cheap or close to free, but they're hungry monsters. Blogs are powerful tools, but you have to go about them as a major campaign. You have to design its content, you have to have sort of an editorial policy, you have to know how you're going to promote that out to people, how you're going to build and maintain that, and then you also have to feed it a lot of stuff constantly. Because if it goes out of date a week or two, people will go to it, They'll look around, they'll see the same old stuff, they're gone, you have lost them. So blogs can be very powerful, but they're very difficult to make powerful and very difficult to keep powerful. So don't jump into a blog thinking somehow magically this is going to make a big difference for you, because you'll just get lost in this 17 billion, because a blog is just basically a simple website. So you'll just get lost in there. You have to build a very conscious campaign and probably even have a ghostwriter to make sure that there's lots of content. Some great samples. I just saw there's a new edition now, the ABA Blog 100. I think they've gone to the ABA Blog 200. I think that was the last thing that I saw. Okay, a quick summary here. What do I think is the most cost-effective marketing mix? First of all, referral marketing. Number 1, number 2, number 3 is referral marketing, building that referral base. The caveat here is that's not going to happen in 2 months. That's not going to happen in 6 months. It's a building process that will start to pay off, a ways down the line, but will continue to be cumulative for the rest of your career. So you're building a constantly inclined curve. The key word in building referral relationships is patience, which is not in the average lawyer's lexicon. So you have to learn that new word. The next is a well-developed website. You will literally lose good referrals if you don't have a good website. The next is targeted advertising. You don't have to have a big budget for this. You have to identify who your target market is and identify those media that are most closely related to that target market or to your target referral sources. Next is being involved and becoming visible, developing some leadership roles in key organizations. Now, that said, let me elaborate on that a little bit. There are sort of a couple of kinds of organizations. One may be that you want to be visible to the membership of this organization, the chamber, the Economic Development Council, so forth and so on. Another is that you may want to be connected to the leadership of a particular organization. The board of directors, the committees that are involved with this association. It may not be entirely the membership, but it may be that you want to build relationship with its leadership. So organizations can be very powerful for you in building and maintaining referral relationships and being hooked into a level of the community that's important for success. So it may be the general membership, but it may also simply be the leadership of that organization that you should be involved in and become part of its organization. A lot of resources for blogs, for websites, and so forth. These are resources. Modernfirm.com is a good one. It's a young guy up in Michigan who is the son of the CLE director for the Michigan State Bar, and he does a real good job. Then there are many which are very inexpensive to develop your own or to have someone who's techie in your family use. Network Solutions, GoDaddy, Register.com, Google Business, Yahoo Small Business, or if you want to look at a blog, and please do that with great caution and great care, great consideration, you can go to ProBlogger.com or typepad.com. Let's talk for a moment about your email address. So many people in small firms, sole practitioners, are using yahoo.com, Gmail, MSN.com, Roadrunner, RRCFL.com, for instance. You just don't want to do this. It is an immediate sign that you're not fully professional. It says, I can't afford an office. It says, I can't afford a real address. It says, I just have a post office box. Consumers already see that. And if your target, for instance, is businesses, more sophisticated prospects, the last thing they want to do is send their sensitive information through the bus station. So these are seen as sort of public sources. It says not successful, and it also says not secure. What you want to do is have your own domain name. And they're cheap. You can go to Network Solutions or GoDaddy and you can register a domain name for $10 for a year right now. So there's no reason that you can't have your own domain name to use for your email address. Now, as far as getting that to work in Outlook, I can't tell you how, but find a 10-year-old, they'll set it up for you. No problem. Now, you can have your own domain name for your email address and not have a domain. But don't do that. The reason is, as soon as they see your domain name, they will go look for your domain. And when you don't have one, you'll be right back in the same box. So bottom line is, yeah, you need a website. That said, the cost of developing a decent website have been dropping through the floor. If you have some reasonable tech savvy, you can do a decent website. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be lengthy. It just has to make a good impression, have that good basic information on there. You can do it for a couple $100. You can have them professionally developed by experts for $1,000, $2,000. I have a half a dozen sources, good sources, that will develop you a full-blown, complete website with all the bells and whistles and everything you want for about $2,000. So this is an important investment. This is an investment in the future. Don't make the mistake of being a cash flow or a checkbook lawyer. You need to know that you have a business here and that you want to grow that business. And sometimes you have to make what you might consider in the business world a capital investment. I have to spend money to make money. So don't wait until you have enough in the checkbook to do that. Do it now so that you will have enough in the checkbook later. Okay, we've come a long way, but we're still at point number 2, the initial contact. So we've gotten them past awareness through referrals, through advertising, through articles in the paper, through being involved in local organizations, being visible. People have become aware of you and what you do, and now they've decided to contact you. So this starts to be the moment of truth. There's an important concept here, and it goes back to my statement that 80% of communication is nonverbal. Okay? Be aware of what I call the emotional bank account. 80% of communication is nonverbal, and every client or prospect comes to you in some degree of fear and mistrust. They're afraid of their problem, they're afraid of what they don't know about their problem, they're afraid of the cost of the problem, and they're afraid of you. For most people, hiring a lawyer is just another part of the problem. So understand that they walk in, even if they're highly referred, they walk in fear. Oh my gosh, now I got to work with a lawyer. So it's not, oh, that's great, I'm in a lawyer's office, everything's going to be fine. Now they're worried about you. So your first job is to build a sense of safety and trust. I'm in the right place, this feels right. Notice the word feel. And from that moment on, you're maintaining or building that trust relationship. It begins with that initial impression. Did the referral source say enough, powerfully enough, to have them call you? If they called you, was that referral source a strong enough influence to have them see you differently? What did the advertising say that had them say, I need to call this person? What was on the website or the blog that had them make that decision, or the article, or the personal contact? I got to tell you a quick story here. Some years ago, I was talking about the whole issue of personal contact to a lawyer in an Orlando firm, and he said, yeah, I know. And this guy was a great marketer, one of the top in the firm. He says, I know all about it. He says, I even carry business cards in my bathing suit. He said, some years ago, I was walking on the beach in Siesta Key and got to talking to this guy, and I'm thinking to myself, ye gods, this guy ought to be a client of mine. And I didn't have a business card. So he says, ever since then, I get a little baggie, put some business cards in it, and stuff it in my bathing suit when I go walking on the beach. So you want to make sure that those personal contacts are effective as well. But then that first touch is increased or decreased by what happens when they pick up the phone to call your office. Do they get voicemail? I contend that if you have voicemail as the primary method of answering your phone, you need to ask the phone company to track your phone line, because they can tell you how many hang-ups you get before they leave a voicemail. Particularly if you are driven by and large by the web, by advertising, when they get voicemail, they just move on to the next one on the Google list or the next one in the yellow pages. So voicemail is deadly. Voicemail is last resort. You want to do everything you can to have that phone answered by a real live person who is competent, by the way. This is an important investment. It doesn't mean you have to hire somebody. There are some excellent answering services. Make sure that you get a highly professional one. The way you do it is on a weekly basis. You call and you test them. Give them a script. It's exactly how you want them to handle those calls. And make sure that that phone is being answered well. The next best way to do this is to talk to a friend who has a law office, has someone answering the phone. Ask if you can pay them to have your phone answered there by their professional assistant. It's worth that expense. It is absolutely worth it. But if they get voicemail, or the next thing, if you got, some teenager in there that's answering the phone, hi, Jones Law Office. If the answering is unprofessional, the impression is as bad or worse. If it's cold or disinterested, if your business is web-driven and you're getting a lot of calls from strangers, you may be aware of whether it's voicemail or somebody leaving a message with a live person, how difficult it is to ever get hold of that person when you have to return that call. The reason is they've moved on. They don't want to talk to you. They've already done something else. So if what they hear is, I'm sorry, she's not in. Can I take a message and have her call you back? The first impression is negative. Negative. If it's stressed, I see this a lot, particularly with really, really busy lawyers. They're going nuts. Their hair is on fire. They're running around, and the phone rings. They pick it up. John Jones! Little key here. No matter what else is going on around you, when you pick up that phone, take a breath and say to yourself, it's showtime. John Jones, may I help you, please? Because they're looking for someone that they can trust to handle their problem. And if you seem to be out of control, you have just damaged the relationship development. What happens then? Is that person that answers the phone helpful and professional? Or does that caller get a vague call you back? What do I mean by helpful and professional? It's important for you to understand that once you've gotten them to call, you're at the second level of building that chain of trust and relationship that's eventually going to lead to them saying yes. So Helpful and professional. A side note here. When the phone rings, there are two things going on. The person calling wants information and they want service. Now, they can feel served and taken care of even if they didn't get the information. But for instance, with voicemail or the vague, I'll take a message and have them call you back, they didn't feel like they got service and they didn't feel like they got information. They just feel frustrated. So, helpful and professional looks like this. Oh yes, I know he'd love to talk with you. He's not available right now, but look, would you be available at 4 o'clock? I'll put it right on his calendar and I'll make sure he calls you back at 4 o'clock. How's that? Or very simply, great, we'll see you Friday at 2 o'clock. Now, do you know where we are? Yeah, we're downtown by the courthouse. We're in the beautiful restored building. We have a door that has leaded glass in the front. You can park right across the street. Even though they haven't gotten the information, they're feeling taken care of. And that's an important piece in building that chain of trust. I travel a huge amount. And I love to work with Southwest Airlines and Enterprise Rent-A-Car. Why? Because they understand that I'm not just there for a plane flight or a car. I'm there to be taken care of. Enterprise is a perfect example. When I get to the counter or when I get to the place to pick up the rental car, the shuttle bus pulls up, the door opens, and there is someone standing there with a clipboard with my name on it and greeting me and personally shake hands. They always shake hands. They say, Mr. Cole, let me take you right in. They don't stand behind the desk and wait for somebody to show up. They understand that service, being taken care of, is very important. You're not just about the legal skills. You're about taking care of people in every way. And it starts right here in their earliest impressions of you. Okay, so now we've gotten past that hurdle. They've made an appointment to come in and see you. And now they parked their car across the street and they're looking out at your office. What is the external appearance of the building that you're in, or the front door? Is your sign a little tarnished? Can they find your sign? What's it look like when they get inside the building? Is the hallway dirty? Is it need painting? Is there old tile on the floor? What does it look like? Now, they open the door to your office. I had an incredible experience some years ago. I did a seminar in Phoenix, and I got a call from a young man who was in a practice with his dad, and he wanted me to help him build his practice. So, as I start with a client, I always spend a full day in their practice physically with them, learning about their practice, their market, the attorney themselves, their skills, their personality, their appearance, everything. I opened the door, I walked in, and I thought I'd slipped through a time warp into 1955. It was a museum. From 1955, it looked like nothing had been disturbed since 1955. The interesting thing is, as I walked through the office, I happened to look down and I realized that they had actually chosen a typeface on their computer that looked like an old fabric typewriter ribbon. I was aghast. The impression was, we're not of this world, we're someplace lost in time. So talk about an incredibly bad impression. Personal experience another time, just completely personally. I had a back problem. I went to see an orthopedic surgeon. And I was in the waiting room, and I picked up a magazine. And it was yachting. In an eye blink, I hated the doctor. Number one, he was saying to me, I don't really care what you're interested in. Read my old cast-offs. And number two, he was saying to me, I make a gob of money off of you fools. So the impression that was left for me with perhaps a superb surgeon was that I didn't want to have anything to do with him. I hated him from square one. Do you think that made me a good patient? Do you think that made me cooperative and supportive and trusting? No, not at all. So it is important. Every step of the way builds credibility, trust, and relationship. You need to look at all of this, the whole thing, from the eyes of a stranger. What does it look like? Magazines, are there 3-year-old magazines there? Is it attorney magazines? What's the reception area look like? Is it clean? You have a door there and it has a glass light on the side of it and there's a crack at the bottom of it and you've been meaning to get that fixed, but that was years ago and you don't even see it anymore. It's become invisible to you. It's not invisible to the person who first walks in there as a stranger. They're doing this and they see it and they start forming an impression of you. So long before you ever even meet them face to face, they have built up an impression of you. So now they come into your office. They sit down in your office and you've got the stacks and piles of files. The average attorney will say, well, it's okay because that way they know I'm busy. Now they just look around and they go, am I going to get lost in this crap? Does that build trust? No, it really doesn't. Neat, orderly, clean, institutional. Attorneys are fond of meeting their clients in the conference room. And it may be a lovely conference room, but it's impersonal. It does not have any flavor of who you are. So I always believe that you should be meeting in your own office. So let me walk you through the effective initial interview or prospect meeting. Now remember, what we're doing here from the very beginning, how people find you, is building a chain of relationship and trust that it's going to lead to that person hiring you, bringing that person to saying yes. So here's what I suggest. Understand that they will, at the end of the day, make decisions on two things. What somebody else said about you, that could be the referral source, that could be you were quoted as an expert in an article someplace, so that's what other people said about you, and their own feelings and emotions. I know that for the intellectual lawyer is kind of doesn't register. But I want you to think about the language they will use when they go home to their wife or husband or their business partner. And that person says, well, you talked to the lawyer, what'd you think? Did you hire him? Yeah, just really liked him. Just felt really good about him. I think they're the right one. At the end of the day, they will make the decision here. Now, they may justify it with a lot of intellectual stuff, but the decision will be made here on their feelings and emotions. And that's what you're working to build. To be retained, to have that person say, great, let me write you a check, you must build sufficient safety and trust. And most people came in not neutral, but negative. So you've got a lot of trust building to go through. Basic rules. Consciously, visually develop an environment that fosters trust. Perfect example. And this was also an attorney that knew his target market. He worked with attorneys some years ago in Jackson, Mississippi, family law attorney. Ex-football player, big wide shoulders, square chin, football player, all right? But his target market was doctors and lawyers' wives. He knew his target market. His reception area was incredibly well thought out. It was comfortable, soft colors, just a hint of feminine. The chairs were female-sized. There was a coffee table with a beautiful lamp with a personal base, a porcelain base. The whole room had been designed by a designer. It was beautiful. Not only that, but when someone walked in the door, the receptionist, being very well trained and very professional, would look at her appointment book. And she would look up and say, "Mrs. Jones? Oh, I'm glad you're here. I know he's looking forward to talking with you. Have a seat." Then she would get up, she would walk around her desk, and she would go over to the lady and she would say, "Would you like some coffee or tea?" It was a menu. It was a little menu of coffees and teas, and they had one of those machines in the back room. So she'd go make whatever it was, and she would put it in a lovely porcelain cup, china cup, with a cookie on the side and a cloth napkin underneath. And she would walk out and she would put it on a coffee table next to the client. Now I want you to think about, here's a client whose life is in disarray, who's in chaos, who's in stress, who is got millions of things going on in her head. And she walks in and she immediately feels taken care of, safe, accepted, and being pampered. His clients loved him because he understood what they needed to feel safe and comfortable. So, create an environment that fosters trust. Meet in your office, not in the conference room. Now, what that means is you're going to have a clean desk. I know that's tough for a lot of folks to do. But remember what a cluttered desk says about you. It says out of control, too busy. It's also distracting, not only to them, but to you in communication. Stand up. Walk to the door. If the receptionist brings them back, greet them at your door, or go out to the reception area and invite them in. Shake hands, touch. Remember the basic meaning of the handshake. Go back into primitive times. The handshake means no weapon. It means I'm not a threat. So the handshake is incredibly important, and the human touch is part of that emotional as well. So as you escort that person in, close the door, but before you do, lean out. "Mrs. Jones, I'm going to be with Mrs. Smith for the next hour. Please hold all my calls, no interruptions, please." Now, Ms. Jones already knows that, but you didn't say it for her. You said it for the lady who's sitting in the chair. You need her to know that she has your full attention. Offer some refreshment. Would you like a Coke or a cup of coffee, or can we get you some water or something? This is basic hospitality. This says you're welcome here. I want you to feel taken care of. This may sound like fluff, but it's not. It's basic gut communication. Then sit down and focus on them. Listen fully. Don't take calls. Don't allow any interruptions. No distractions. There are things that go on for you that you don't even see anymore. Your assistant coming in and putting something in your in-basket or getting something off the credenza, something or other. The fearful client sees that. They're aware of it. It distracts them. So when that door is closed, have it stay closed. Give them 100% attention. That means eye contact. 60% of the legal profession are introverts. Now, in the general population, it's only 40%. For introverts, particularly those farther down on the introvert scale, maintaining eye contact is difficult. It's uncomfortable for me. But understand to a stranger what not being looked at, what unconscious signal that gives. untrustworthy, unsure of themselves, weak. Now, none of that is true, but the problem is that they're not processing it consciously. They're processing it unconsciously right here. So what that means is you're giving negative impressions even when you're trying not to. So even if you're an introvert, even if it's not comfortable for you to maintain eye contact, practice it. Think of the base of eye contact. It's how we glue relationships together. You walk through the mall and you see a couple of young people and they're staring into each other's eyes. It is one of the most powerful methods of nonverbal communication that we have. So eye contact is hugely important. Listen with your body. Don't lean back in your chair and twiddle with your toys and look out the window while you're listening to them. Lean forward, listen to them, eye contact, listen with your body. It's not just intellectually connected, I'm emotionally connected with you. Make notes, write things down. It says, this is important. Frankly, even if you've already heard it, if you don't need to, this is a message to them as well. Don't interrupt. The average lawyer speaks faster than the average consumer. We also process information more quickly. So someone may be halfway through a sentence. We've got it. We talk over them. We jump ahead. Again, the reaction of this person who doesn't know you very well, who is still a little fearful and concerned, the gut reaction is it's a pushback. It's a pushback. Again, they're not processing it consciously, they're processing it unconsciously. This is what have them go out of the meeting talking to their spouse or their business partner, and when they say, did you hire him, say, I don't know, just, I just didn't like him. I don't feel right. They can't even tell you why. But the signals added up to negatives rather than positives. Empathize. Again, nonverbal. You ever go to the doctor and the doctor just pokes you, goes, and you go, what? Empathize. Yeah, uh-huh. Really? Uh-huh. Connect completely. 80% of communication, 80% of the decision they will make is nonverbal. Nonverbal. Communicate back fully. Don't give them a lot of legal jargon. Don't go with the ifs, ands, and buts in the process. Listen carefully to their pace of speech. Again, we tend to speak faster than the average consumer. That's again one of those places where if they're talking like this, and we're talking like this, it makes them nervous. Answer their questions low-key, simply, honestly, directly. Don't pontificate. Don't try and demonstrate how brilliant you are. Little key. They would not be sitting in that chair talking with you if they didn't already assume you could probably do the work. They don't need to be convinced of that. They just need to be convinced of the next one. Is this somebody I can feel comfortable with and trust? That's what they're there to make the decision about. End the meeting the way you started. Stand up, thank them, walk them to the door. The decision they make will be based on how they feel about you. Now, in that meeting at some point, they're going to ask you about fees. Now, I want to give you two pieces on this. Number one is, if one of the first questions they put up is, and it often is, how much will it cost me? If you give them a number early in the conversation, from then on you're hung on cost. And now your conversation stays in the realm of cost for product. you've almost pushed it back to commodity. So the basic conversation when it comes to cost early on in the conversation should be this very simply. And they say, how much do you think it's going to cost? Say, well, I might not even be the right attorney for you. Tell me more about the situation, and then I may be able to make a better estimate. So put off the price until you can build some of that rapport and relationship, and you can build some of that positive deposit in the emotional bank account. The question will be put in its perspective if you've built some relationship, if you've gotten them to that point where they're thinking, you know, like this woman, I really like her. I think they're mentally very much positive. The price question will be handled differently. So that said, let's talk about some ways to look at pricing your services. Understand that the average consumer buys things at a price. They understand flat rate. They're not comfortable with uncertainty. And they assume that if you say it depends or it's hourly, that you're on the dole and no matter what happens to them, they've got a bill to pay. So we want to look at creative ways to deal with the issue of price. Here are some alternatives. The first of all is the most familiar, is a contingency. Now, what I'm seeing, particularly in the area of trial lawyers, where I'm seeing the real growth in contingency is actually in commercial contingency. Working with business people on commercial issues. So contingency is very, very strong and is moving rapidly into the business area and not just personal injury. The next is the fixed or flat rate. The fact is that until about the mid-1960s, that's how most lawyers worked, on a flat rate. Hourly was not really part of the game until about 1967. Unit billing or step-by-step. For instance, you might give a price, let's say you're doing an estate plan. And in that initial interview, they say, well, how much? And what you might say is, well, you know, there are sort of several levels of complexity. Now, if this turns out to be a simple will, which means A, B, and C, well, then the fee will be X. Now, if we have to go to another step and we have to do D, E, and F, then it will be this rate. So you can sort of build a clear picture based on the level of service, and you can also do it sort of step by step. There's the statutory or scheduled, and I hope you don't have to get into that too much because that means you're working for the government at $45 an hour, and that's not very fun, or insurance defense at $125 an hour. That's a tough business to be in these days. The next is some blended rates. A fixed rate to a certain point, and then if it goes beyond that, we may have to go to hourly. A fixed plus a contingency, or percentage. Then there's this whole larger area called value billing. And that, in some respects, is another term for flat rate. But value billing can be just an amount up front or a retrospective success fee. One of the ways that I find people working more frequently is hourly or flat rate plus a contingency at the end. A large and growing area is a reduced fee plus contingency. Again, this is a great situation to work in the business world because what it says is that you are working to sort of partner with the client, be sort of on the risk with them. So it may be a straight contingency on a commercial matter, or it may be that you, for instance, say, well, look, my normal fee is $300 an hour, but I'll work with you on this at $150 an hour. I'll cut my rate in half. But in doing so, if we get to the end and we weren't able to recover your loss, then you've got the benefit of that. If we are, then you agree to give me X percentage of what we recover. So these are very attractive options in the business world. A moment to talk about the concept of unbundling, which basically is defined as limited scope representation. I'm only going to advise you on this piece here. I don't want to go too much into this. There's been a lot written on it, but there are a lot of hooks in this. The first thing that I want to say is if you have agreed to do any type of limited scope representation, you must, please have it in writing. And that agreement needs to specify very, very clearly that you are only providing guidance or service in this very specific area. And it needs to state as clearly as possible what you are not going to be responsible for. And you need to make sure that that's in your file and signed by the client. Because in some cases, when that's not well defined, you get dragged into things that you're not going to get paid for or that are out of your scope. So essentially, this is something that was created a long time ago, and actually it's not new. It's just sort of been redefined. It's always been there, but it was actually sort of formalized some years ago because of the increased need for access to legal services by people who can't afford them. So understand that's sort of the core of all of this. Here's one of the hooks that I discovered in Colorado. Colorado adopted the ABA model rule, but when I was talking about it in the seminar, somebody raised their hand and said, yeah, but there's a problem here. Most of the federal judges don't agree. So you go to federal court and you say, I'm only here, and the judge says, no, you're not, and the deed's done. So the next thing that I would suggest is make sure you understand the judges and the rules in your particular jurisdiction. Be very, very careful with unbundling. So there's some recommended reading on the issue of alternative fees. Great book. It's in its second edition now. Some of my friends have contributed greatly to it. Winning Alternatives to the Billable Hour. It's from the ABA Law Practice Management section. Okay, getting to yes. Now, you've gone through the interview and you're approaching that moment of truth. Fundamental principle here is talk 10% and listen 90%. This is one of the ways to develop rapport and to develop that sense of trust in people, is you want them to know you fully are listening, you understand, they have your full attention. You know, going back to the orthopod that I went to, one of the things that bothered me was he came in, he looked at the chart, he never even looked me in the eye. He came over, he examined me a little bit, he said, well, you know, and he walked out. Now I really hated him because I didn't feel like he cared. I didn't feel like I was anything but a slab of meat to him. So listening is a powerful tool here. So you get to the end of the conversation, you've done a great job of building rapport and relationship, and they ask, finally, again, they ask the question, well, how much? So the first thing is, if that happens early in the conversation, you want to move the conversation to later. I may not even be the right attorney for you. What you want to do during that process is to work on building the relationship. You want to have them understand the results, the benefits that you can deliver. So what you're doing in that process is you're moving the conversation from price for paper, to value for benefit. So understand when you finally put that price out, when you finally say, well, my price for that will be X. If you've done your job in building that rapport and relationship and trust, when you put that number out there, the one who speaks first loses. What do I mean by that? Usually the reaction when you put the number out will be on the side of the prospect, a pause and a look. Really? At that moment, our fear kicks in. And we want to go, well, you know, it's possible that maybe we could, and we want to backpedal. If you've done your job, when they say, oh, really, all you do is nod. And you let the pause stay. Because again, if you've done your job right, after the pause, they will look at you and say, okay. And that's the moment of truth. So how do you deal with price competition? Well, gee, you know, the guy down the street said he'd do it for $2,000. Well, you know, is this something that you're willing to trust to somebody without my level of experience? How important is this to you? Would you want to trust it to the lowest bidder? I know that you want to have this handled in a way that keeps you as safe as possible, so that you have the best protection in the situation. There's always going to be somebody willing to do it for less. The question is, who do you trust the most? So, we've gone through the steps from how do people find you to closing the sale, to having that person at the end of the day look at you and say, okay, you're my attorney. It's not rocket science. There are two basic principles. Number one is relationship, and number two is relationship. Relationship with your referral sources, your former clients, building that trust and relationship, and building the relationship, the trust with the person once they have decided to come into personal contact with you. It's all about relationship. It's all about trust. It's all about establishing a value, a benefit that goes beyond price for paper. It's not difficult, but it does require a lot of focus, careful thought, and very carefully designed conversations, whether it's out there in public, with your family, with clients, prospects. You can build a great business based on integrity, based on high ethical standards, based on respect of other professionals in your community. It won't happen overnight. It won't happen in a few months. But you probably already have some significant resources out there that you haven't fully touched. Look to them first, and then move through and build more and more relationships. It's a process that goes on for the rest of your career. It's not an instant answer, but it's the most long-term, solid answer. It's the least expensive and the one that has the most integrity and allows you to be in a position of wide respect and trust. So, I know you all know the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Well, I have to have a new definition for insanity. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the same results. The world's changing. Everything's changing. Competition is worse. The economy is bad. Everything is going on that makes it tougher for you. So it's about doing things differently. It's about understanding that marketing is primary. Remember what I said earlier on. If no one asks you to work with them, your skills don't matter. So marketing has to be a first priority. And the fact is that doing nothing is a choice too. So what are you going to do? If I can be of any help at all, I'm happy to do so. You can contact me through attorneysmasterclass.com, or you can call me. There's information in your handout materials about the things that I do, and a number of articles that you'll find on the file that I hope are helpful. And if I can help in any way, I hope you'll call. Thank you. For more information, visit the Florida Bar's Lomas website at www.floridabar.org/Lomas.